All right, it looks like we have all of our interactive sites here, so that is great to see. So welcome everyone. My name is Casey Gaylord Opaleski, and I am the programs manager here at EarthEcho International. We thank you for joining us today for EarthEcho's STEMExplore Virtual Career Connection featuring Rose Hedges from UnityPoint Health at St. Luke's Hospital in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Like I said, my name is Casey, and I'm a programs manager here at EarthEcho International. And we're so excited to have students from all over the globe joining us as we learn about exciting and sustainable careers in science, technology, engineering, and math. So this live event is part of STEMExplore, EarthEcho's program that brings inspiration to life by telling the stories of dynamic female professionals in STEM careers during live virtual connections. We want to thank our founding sponsor, United Technologies, for their support of women in STEM. And of course, here at EarthEcho, we believe that youth have the power to change the planet. So please visit www.earthecho.org to learn more about our programs. You can also access resources like STEMExplore's career profile videos, as well as tune in for upcoming virtual events just like this one. So I want to recognize and thank all of our partner sites that have joined us today. So I do want to take a little stop over to our friends in Eastern Florida. We've got a group with Prime Time of Palm Beach County at Green Acres. So hello, Green Acres. How is everyone? Great to see you guys. We're so glad you could join us. Now let's head up north. And by the way, I'm in Florida too, so it's great to see you. We're having some very hot weather here. Now let's head up north to our friends in Cedar Rapids, Iowa at Jefferson High School. How are you, Jefferson High? They will definitely pop back in. I think they might have dropped off, but they will be with us. And we do want to recognize all of our partner sites around the United States. Now, I also want to say hello to all the folks that are watching the live stream, either on our websites or on YouTube, especially those sites that are joining us today. We've got a group from British Columbia, Canada, as well as Jacksonville and Navarre Beach, Florida. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Now, just a couple of housekeeping things. Just a reminder that you can send us in questions for our STEM expert, Rose Hedges, via chat. So if you are on this Zoom call right now, there is a chat space. So you can definitely use that and enter in questions at any time. If you are watching the live stream on our YouTube channel, go ahead and use that chat space that is available to the right side of the screen, and you can chat in questions there, and we'll be sure that Rose gets those for you. And we will definitely stop throughout the program to answer your questions. So let's get everything started. So I want to welcome our special guest for EarthEcho's STEMExplore Virtual Career Connections, Rose Hedges. So hello, Rose, how are you? Great to see you, Rose. I think you're muted. I can help with that. There we go. Perfect. How are you, Rose?
Good, thanks.
Great to see you. Now, I want to introduce everyone to Rose before she gets started to tell her story about who she is, what has inspired her, and about her career in STEM, because it's a pretty cool one. So Rose Hedges began nursing on an inpatient surgical unit and then transitioned to a cardiac intensive care unit where she discovered her determination to find solutions to optimize patient outcomes. Her current role is in informatics at UnityPoint Health, St. Luke's Hospital in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where she utilizes her clinical expertise, computer technology, and information science to support innovation and change throughout the hospital. Rose is also the Maker Nurse Champion at St. Luke's Hospital, where she strives to empower nurses to share solutions they have created to identify problems in healthcare. Rose's passion for health making and prototyping at the point of care continues to influence her daily work. We're so excited to have Rose kick off STEMExplore for 2019. So Rose, why don't you take it away and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Well, you called me a STEM expert, so I'm a little intimidated now. Thank you. I'm just joking. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you all could join today. So before we started talking a little bit about how my path came to be in research and innovation and nursing, I wanted to talk about the hospital that I work at now. So I work for UnityPoint Health, which is a large health system, and St. Luke's Hospital is part of that health system. And we're in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And this hospital is licensed for about 532 beds, which means on a bad day when maybe our other hospital in town might shut down, we could hold that many patients, but typically a daily census might be 250 to 300 patients. And we deliver about 2,300 babies a year. So we're by no means a huge, large hospital, but we're definitely an urban-sized hospital. We also want to recognize that we've been a magnet hospital for several designations now. We're on our third designation. And a magnet hospital is really about the environment that you provide for your nurses. And there's only about 300 hospitals nationwide that have been magnet 3 times or more. So we're kind of in that elite group and something we're very proud of.
And just to kind of give everybody a sense of where you're at and where you grew up, actually.
Yeah, so I actually live in Mount Vernon, Iowa, which is just a little sub-city of Cedar Rapids. And I grew up in Washington, Iowa, just south of Cedar Rapids. And Washington, Iowa is a wonderful little town of about 7,000 people. And this picture here is the Corner Creamery. The Corner Creamery has the best ice cream in the entire world, you guys. If you're ever in little Washington, Iowa, make sure that you stop by, because it's one thing that I always think of when I'm back home. They have some really good ice cream. Other things about kind of growing up and living in a small town, especially in Iowa, we're pretty rural, and I was kind of known as having broken wing syndrome, if you will. My mom always told me that I had broken wing syndrome. So broken wing syndrome, you can Google it. It's really, a lot of nurses might even have it, where they like to find things, animals, people, boyfriends, my mother would say, that might be broken, and you feel like this need to fix them. You need to fix them up and send them on their way. So I definitely am a classic case of broken wing syndrome, because I, even as a child, did that. Also very much a people person. I will talk to anybody at the bus stop, at the mall, at the Target, you name it. I love talking with people and helping people. So definitely did a lot with people growing up. And I think that started really with my first job in the cornfield. So those of you who are not from Iowa, a common job that you might have in Iowa as a preteen teen would be working in the cornfield. And that would be called detasseling, where you take the top of the corn off. So that way the pollen from that tassel doesn't pollinate that ear of corn. I actually worked in corn research, where we did really cross-pollination. So we would make sure that different types of corn pollinated different types of corn, basically to get fancy types of corn. So I was doing science and research at a young age of 12, if you will, but that was pretty cool to work in the cornfield. And then I jumped into healthcare at that time. I decided to start working in the local nursing home, and I worked in the dietary department and helped prepare the meals and things like that after school. It was around that time, 14-ish, that our high school in town joined one of the local colleges to start offering a certified nursing assistant class. And so I went through that class as part of high school credit as well. And I think that might be something that's fairly common today as well. So I did that, and then jumped into working as a CNA at the local nursing home. And that's where I kind of fell in love with the idea of nursing and helping people. And I also played a few sports in high school. I was a catcher for softball, so I was kind of rough and tumble around the edge. If you know anything about catchers and softball, I fit that criteria too.
So why don't you tell us a little bit, you mentioned about in high school how they had those courses for nursing. So why don't you kind of elaborate a little bit more on your path? And don't worry, everyone, we're going to get into what exactly Rose does today. And it's pretty amazing, but her journey there is just as amazing. Go ahead.
So coming from a small town to a big city of Cedar Rapids, which really is not that big in the grand scheme of things, I started at Mount Mercy College at the time. And it was a 4-year private Catholic college, a wonderful school. And my first year there, I had a lot of freedom, and I may have made some poor choices and didn't pass a few classes. So what that meant is I had to figure out a way to make up these classes, also pay for these classes. So you see on my timeline there, I go start from 2003 to 2004, and then I jumped over to Kirkwood, which is our community college, to kind of marry up that time and make up some of those classes to be able to get back into the nursing program, because I didn't study as much as I should have, which honest mistake, but helped shape who I am today. During my time at Kirkwood, I was on the waiting list for the nursing program, so I decided to keep seeing what else was out there. And ended up getting my emergency medical technician certification at that time. And I decided that I liked emergency medicine, but I really wanted to get back into nursing. And that's when I went back to Mount Mercy and got my bachelor's of science and my RN degree. Working as a nurse for a while, I decided that I really loved school. So I'm one of those people that probably could go to school forever. It's just if somebody else would pay for it kind of thing. It all costs money, right? So I got my master's of science in nursing from Mount Mercy University, and then went to Clark in Dubuque, Iowa for my doctorate.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about how you got into everything that you do.
Yeah, so after moving to Cedar Rapids and starting nursing school, I wanted to continue to be able to use my certified nursing assistant certificate, if you will. So I worked at one of the local hospitals here in town, and I was working on a medical surgical floor, and I'll explain more about these, but my path as a nurse so far has really been in kind of the med surg area, jumping into a little bit of the ICU, critical care medicine area, nursing informatics, which is still kind of foreign language to a lot of people, and what I'm doing currently now in research and innovation. So before I talk about med-surg nursing, ICU nursing, and things like that, I wanted to talk about nursing in general. I think that if you ask any nurse or any person, they might give you a different definition of what nursing is. And nursing really does mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But this quote here about what nursing is, it really talked to me from the American Nurses Association. They talk about things like prevention of illness, facilitating healing, protection, promotion, advocacy, all of these things that nurses are. And I just felt that this was a really robust, good definition of what nurses are, because there's so many different things that you do as a nurse and so many opportunities or areas or walks of life that you can be, that once you're a nurse, you really can transition at any point in your career into another specialty and continue to grow. So med-surg nursing. You may have heard about medical surgical nursing. It's really kind of a general area that many different types of patients can go to in the hospital if they were to be admitted. So the floor that I specifically worked on had areas in all of these content areas. So urology, maybe they had problems with their bladder, they might have bladder cancer. GYN or gynecology, maybe they had a hysterectomy or had their uterus removed. Maybe they had a tumor on their ovary. ENT is a short for otolaryngology, also known as ear, nose, and throat. So it didn't fit in my bubble there, so we got ENT instead. So that could be anything from maybe you're having your tonsils out or fixing your nose because you have a deviated septum because it was broke as a child. Any kind of trauma, this is going to be after they get out of the ICU and they come to the general floor that they're still trying to recover and get stronger to go home. We might see those patients there. So that could be car accidents or other kind of things that would happen that it would send you emergently to the emergency room. General surgery, those are things like your appendix or your gallbladder might need to come out, or maybe you have Crohn's disease and you need to have your colon resected because it's part of the disease process there. And kind of a blanket term is sometimes med-surg nurses just kind of have to go with the flow because you might get a patient that just doesn't feel good and they're not well enough to go home yet. They're not sick enough for the ICU, but we're still working on figuring out what the problem is. So it's kind of a catch-all for nursing, and it's really helps nurses build a good platform for getting those critical thinking skills because you see something new every single day. And it's always a challenge as far as mentally, because you never know if you're going to have a bunch of urology patients or maybe general surgery patients, but you kind of have to know a little about a lot of things is kind of what I talk about med-surg nursing as. You have to kind of know where to go as your resources. So I did this for about 6 months after I got my RN, but I worked there as a patient care tech in the hospital for about 5 years. And that really gave me a really good platform for going forward and working in nursing. And it was working here that I realized that I love intensive care medicine, specifically the heart.
Now, Rose, before you get into that a little bit more, with our sites that are connected, I want a show of hands. How many of you out there are interested in going into the medical field? Just so we can kind of gauge and see. I know that there's, all right, so there's a lot at our STEMExplore partner sites at Green Acres, as well as I know there's a number at Jefferson High in Cedar Rapids. And I know a lot of you that are connected. Healthcare obviously is in all of our lives every day. So Rose, let's continue on your journey and talk a little bit more about cardiology and why you are so fascinated and attuned to the heart.
Yeah, so I really like the idea of being responsible and working as a cohesive team with the physicians and other therapists and caring for somebody who's in a really critical time of need. And one thing that I found while working in intensive care medicine, which is where somebody would go if maybe they're on a breathing machine or a heart and lung machine, or maybe they need special drugs to keep their blood pressure up so they can stay alive. One thing I fell in love with while here was the heart. And the reason I like the heart, I think, is because maybe I grew up in a military family, very structured. Things are supposed to be this way. You know, Saturday morning, I got up and we had to do our chores, and then you could do it the rest of the day you wanted. And I kind of just how I grew up. And so I found with the heart, there is a certain way that it should work. And that part, I think, just stuck out to me. And I just love everything about dealing with any kind of heart patient, from open heart surgery to somebody who might have a heart attack and we're having to keep them cold so we can preserve their brain function. But there's kind of 3 different pathways I wanted to talk about with the heart. So there's the blood flow through the heart. That's one area that we talk about in healthcare in general, but as nurses, we need to know kind of where's the blood coming from and where is it going to. And you can see here on this graph, the blue is where the blood is coming from the body into the heart. So it comes in from both directions there into the vena cavas, but it goes into the right atrium. And it's feeding itself first. And I think one of the things that we do as healthcare professionals is we give and give and give of ourselves, but we don't replenish ourselves too. So I think that we all could take a little advice from the heart as far as feeding ourselves too and taking care of ourselves before we care for everyone else. But then you can see here how it goes from the right atrium to the right ventricle and up and out and into the lungs, because it's getting more oxygen then, and then back into the heart and back out to the body. So this process is a very specific process. Comes in one way, goes through this path, goes out that way, comes back in, and then goes out this way. If there's something wrong with that process, we have to identify it and fix it fairly swiftly, because your heart is really what's keeping you alive. And I think that's kind of where my attraction came to it. So this is the blood flow in the heart. You also have the coronary arteries of the heart. So the blood that's actually feeding the heart itself as a muscle or a tool. So you can see here that the vessels on the outside of the heart there, you have things like the right coronary artery, or you might hear the word RCA, or the left anterior descending artery. So the LAD, that is also known as the widowmaker. If we have somebody who has a heart attack, it's common that you may hear that they had a 99% occlusion or blockage of the LAD. And what that would be is there was either a blood clot or plaque or some kind of buildup that's stopping the blood flow from getting to the rest of the heart to feed that muscle, so your heart's not pumping as well. And that's how you get the chest pain that would come with a heart attack. So the other pathway that a lot of people don't specifically know about, but also is interesting is on the side, I teach CPR to community members. So we talk about the difference between a cardiac arrest and a heart attack. And there actually is a difference. And a lot of times in maybe Grey's Anatomy or the public or something, you might hear them kind of intermingled in the same term, but one's actually a plumbing problem and one's an electrical problem. So the plumbing problem is a heart attack. There's a blockage of that. And then a cardiac arrest is dealing with this pathway here you see on your heart, on your screen there. So you have the different nodes, which is controlling when it basically shocks the heart to give a beat, so that lub-dub, lub-dub. And if there's a breakage of that chain there, that's what's going to cause you to either have maybe one of the ventricles or the atrium to kind of quiver, and they can be still moving but not adequately pumping your blood, and so you're not getting blood where you need to in your body. This is kind of when you would see, or you may have heard, hopefully not experienced, but especially with young kiddos, you see maybe on the basketball court, they just topple over, and it could be that they're in cardiac arrest, and that's when that AED or the automated external defibrillator is important because that's what shocks your heart back into the normal rhythm when you're having that electrical problem. So all of these different processes really, I just have always been really interested in it. There's a certain way that it's supposed to work. And I just have been drawn to that. I like being able to fix that up.
All right, great. So can you tell us a little bit more? And I will tell everyone out there, we're getting very close to breaking for questions. We wanted to give you kind of a basic understanding of how, where Rose grew up and what kind of drove her knowledge and her passion into the healthcare industry. And she's going to tell you about where she is today, and we're going to launch into it a little bit further. So get those questions ready because we just have 2 more slides before we get to those. So go ahead, Rose.
Perfect. So after working in the intensive care unit, I was also going to school for my master's degree, and I was kind of thinking about what are the next areas of focus I wanted to look at in nursing. And it was along the same time that my hospital was getting a new electronic health record. So they asked me to come on board as a clinical informaticist. And so if you ask my dad what a clinical informaticist would be, he said, I don't know, someone with computers. Which is kind of accurate. I'm definitely not IT. I can't fix your computer, but the software on the computer, I can probably help you with that. So clinical informatics is really taking nursing science, so the critical thinking, the things that I've learned along the way about different types of patients, and the information science and computer science, and really marrying those things together to get good patient outcomes. Things such as if a patient comes into the hospital with pneumonia, we want to make sure that the tool that they're using to document in, or maybe use to order the right things, they're ordering the most appropriate evidence-based things for that patient. So if they come in with pneumonia, I want to be able to pull open an order set that gives me all the available things that are for pneumonia right now, but maybe I know that it's a bacterial pneumonia that's come from the community. This list of 5 different drugs is the most appropriate for that type of pneumonia. And we want to be able to make sure that the doctor has that information readily available, because I don't know about you, but I can't remember all the types of antibiotics. But how can we help the computer work for the providers and the nurses? And that's just one example of some of the things that we do. But how can we use technology to provide optimal care along with all of the evidence-based standards that are just ever growing every single day? So I spent about the last 7 years working in informatics doing that.
Awesome.
So most recently in the last year, about 18 months now, I transitioned into nursing research and innovation coordinator. So my FTE, or my position, is broken up into, they call a whole position 1. So 0.4 of my position today is informatics, and then 0.6 is research and innovation. So we're working on lots of evidence-based practice projects throughout the hospital. And that could be something as, how do we measure the impact we're making by providing an iPad to a kid when they come in for surgery before the OR starts? Are we able to decrease the amount of meds that we give? So we study things like that and look at what kind of impact we're making with kind of decreasing that. And then the other 2 that you see there at the bottom of the screen, the Sleep Smart and MOST, those are 2 nationally funded Institute of Health studies that we are a hospital partner with. So there's usually 100 or more hospitals that take on these studies. And these 2 specifically are looking at how can we change the care for stroke patients and provide better care for them.
Great. All right. So that was a very good baseline of who Rose is and what she does. So why don't we go ahead and take some questions? So again, if you're watching via any of the live streams, go ahead and chat in questions. But I do want to go to 2 of our interactive partner sites. We have Jefferson High School in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We have the STEM Club up there. So go ahead and unmute your microphone, Jefferson High, and let's see if you have any questions for Rose.
You have any questions, guys? What areas in the hospital do you work in most?
Oh, what areas in the hospital do you work in most? Great question.
Yeah. So my position is a little bit unique in that I work in just about every area of the hospital. So I go to all of the nursing units, and I also sit on some of the leadership meetings where I can help integrate what's going on in the front line in with the leadership team and vice versa. So right now I'm currently in my office, which is in the old nursing dormitory kind of across the street. So that's where I'm at right now. But I do get around the whole hospital. I still kind of work PRN a little bit, which means as needed. I've worked a couple shifts in the ED recently, kind of helping out, getting my nursing feet wet again. So
Awesome. All right. Jefferson, do we have another question out there?
So, there's like those groups, like, there's the, like, this type of group with like the research things for like improvement in the health.
Research teams for improvement.
Yeah, is she like in one of those groups?
Great. She's asking about if there's any research team for improvement in medical care. Yeah.
All the time.
Oh, that's good.
Say that is something that we, as a magnet hospital, as a hospital in general, I would say that hospitals do typically try to look at how can we impact patient care. And it's always taking on, we try to work with the frontline staff. So people with their ideas, and we vet them through our councils to see if there's any projects we can do. But what we're going to talk about next is kind of how we're being innovative and leading the way with innovation and involving kind of making, if you will. So that's kind of an exciting piece coming up.
Excellent. All right, Jefferson, I know you might have a couple other questions, but hold on to those. Let's go over to Green Acres with Primetime Palm Beach County. Why don't you all go ahead and unmute your microphone? Do we have a question out there? Any questions from Green Acres?
Did you hear that?
No, we did not. Can you repeat that for us? Perfect.
Go ahead. Yeah. But speak up.
What is your most favorite part about nursing?
Oh, that's good. What is your favorite part about nursing?
Helping the people. Even in my job today, I might not directly be touching patients as often as I used to be, but it's still the, hey, remember how we changed the way that we care for patients who come in with a heart attack? We've been able to decrease our number of bad events by this number. And I know that I've impacted that work. So I think it still always goes back to helping people for me.
Wonderful. All right, Green Acres, do you have another question?
Wait, who's doing it? All right, make sure you speak up.
What is the definition of a stroke?
Oh, what is the definition of a stroke? Great question.
That's a really good one. So there's different types of strokes. So there's a type of stroke and strokes in your brain where you either have a blood clot or a bleed. So just like your heart, there's vessels that are feeding your brain, and you either can have a clot or like artery plaque buildup, kind of a fatty thing, or it could be air that gets up there, or it could even be fat if you break a bone. That's another type of stroke. Or you could have where maybe one of those vessels rupture and cause blood to go into your brain, like in between your skull and the actual muscle area of your brain, and that's what causes the stroke. There's lots of different things that cause a stroke, but one thing that we teach with our CPR class and kind of heart health as well is signs of a stroke, and that's one thing that actually changed in the last 6 months. So they used to say for strokes, FAST, and it's an acronym, but now they changed it to be fast. So for stroke care, you need to think about being fast. So B stands for balance. If you or somebody you know or a loved one, if you're standing up and you just kind of feel unsteady or dizzy, that could be a sign of a stroke. E stands for eyes. If you are having vision problems, you can't focus, or maybe you have like tunnel vision, something is just off with your eyes, that could be a sign of a stroke. And then F stands for face, and that would be if I ask you to smile, maybe one side of your face would droop, or you can't smile at all. A stands for arms. Have them hold up their arms like so, and then you might see one drift, or you might not even be able to lift up one arm at all. And then S stands for, you're really testing me now. Speed, maybe. Arms. Speech. It's speech, guys. So if you have slurred speech, or they also say what could be called like a word salad. So I could say that my shirt is blue. Can you tell me that? And they might not be able to say that at all. They might say, I went to Walmart, like not even making sense what you're trying to say. And then T is for time, because it's really important to get to the emergency room. as soon as possible. Within about 3 hours is your window that we can give a life-saving drug that breaks up the clot in your brain. So that's why that T is really important. But that's actually changed in the last 6 months. So that's a good call out.
All right, good. That was a great question. And thank you for those life-saving definitions, Rose. That's great. We do have a couple of questions coming in from the chat. So my friend Teague, hello Teague, at OKM Secondary in British Columbia, Canada, asks approximately how many patients' lives have you saved?
Oh, single-handedly? We're a team. So I'm not sure how to interpret that question, but I would say that it would be not uncommon to say that I've done CPR on a patient more than 100 times.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And then Miss Cronquist asked, how many years was your education in total?
Which answer do you want? 4 years for my bachelor's degree. I had that 1 year of kind of leeway time that I was gathering myself. I did 2 years of my master's program and then 2 years for my doctorate.
Excellent. Now, I know we have a lot of great questions out there, so keep them coming through the chat. And our 2 sites, Green Acres and Jefferson High, we're going to come back to you again. But I really want Rose to get into talking a little bit more about something pretty incredible that they've got going on at UnityPoint Health.
Yeah, so during my doctorate studies, I wanted to look at ways to engage staff because we know that engaged staff are retained staff. So I was looking at innovation as a way to do that, and I fell into a company called Maker Health. Maker Health is a sub-company out of MIT in Boston, and they are really an incredible company who want to help facilitate nurses and other frontline staff to bring their ideas to life. So I've been doing this for about the last 2 years. So if you go on to the next slide, I just wanted to share that nursing is not something new to health making or prototyping or making do with what we have. Ever since the early 1900s, we've been actually publishing in the American Journal of Nursing, you can Google this, guys, that there's been different columns. The title of the column has changed. This first one here you see is the trading post, but nurses were writing into the journal and sharing ways in which they were making an impact or something innovative or unique that they were doing that they thought would help other nurses. So you see here we have the baby evacuation emergency apron, which is a little silly, but hey, you know what? Maybe in 1940, that was really a great thing because they didn't know how they're going to get all those babies down that stairs. And then also you see up there at the top, you see a drawing of a woman with an umbrella on her head, which seems silly, but that's probably before they thought about how am I going to get humidified air to a patient who's really dry. And sometimes that's really important for patients. So they were writing in with how they did this in their probably home setting because nursing really started in a home setting outside of the hospital. And then also down there, you see that pink bandage. That's something that we still use today in some variation. That is an ice pack, and that could be used for patients who have their wisdom teeth out. Maybe one of you've had your wisdom teeth out and you've actually had a bandage like this before, but these are all things nurses were doing and they're sharing that, hey, I did this, it's working for me, maybe it'd work for you. And it's not necessarily just things either. You see there the different colored tubes there. A nurse wrote in and say, hey, you know, what's been working for me is I've been color coding my IV tubes. So that way in an emergency situation, I know which line I need to use to push drugs into because it's the safe one. So it's just incredible to me that even early in the 1900s, we were talking about what we were doing with what we had to help improve patient care. So I think the next slide is another thing, just some old pictures. I actually have some of these old journals. They're pretty cool. Up there in the top letter B, that's the Dannenberg mask. And that mask was actually created by a nurse who was recognizing that influenza was being spread and people who were coughing and breathing on them, they were getting sick too. So they created that Dannenberg mask and helped curb the influenza outbreak. F there, that teddy bear, he actually has a little trach in his throat, and that is a tube that's not in your mouth, but in your throat that helps you breathe. And when pediatric patients or kiddos have this was being used to help teach them how to care for it and teach them about it before maybe it happened. And it's just a tool that nurses were saying, hey, this worked for me, but maybe it could work for you too. So I guess with the last 2 slides, I wanted to get the idea out there that nurses have not been just making today, but they've been making for decades, really.
Always innovating and engineering.
Yeah, always, always. So I can't tell you how many times I've tweaked something to make it work. But so Maker Health's motto really is that nurses are faster than any medical device company and closer to the patient than any engineer ever will be. And I cannot tell you how true that is, because oftentimes we might get a new device in the hospital that's supposed to do this, and a nurse, or we might be talking amongst ourselves like, oh, well, man, if it would only do this. And it's just something with your clinical expertise and maybe that engineer who made it, they should talk and maybe they've had a better outcome. So nurses sometimes take this tongue depressor and this bandage and this piece of tape here to twist this to make it do that. That's just super common. That's what we would do. We use what we have to take care of the problem at hand. So if you go on to the next slide, kind of what we've been doing here at the hospital for the last 2 years is we've been working with Maker Health and we've been prototyping. So prototyping is making first drafts, making second drafts, and making some final products of solutions to problems that nurses have identified on the front line. So what this is here is this is Christina, and Christina is a wound nurse. And what she's touching there on the right-hand side is a wound vac. And a wound vac that's the box that sits on the pole, and then there's a vacuum-based dressing that might be in a patient's wound that's basically sucking out all of the secretion so it can heal. Well, when somebody doesn't know that when the alarm is going off on that wound vac, if they don't call for help, or maybe they have a breathing machine and they're not alert enough to call for help, we only have a short amount of time to address that alarm before we would have to tear down the whole dressing and do it completely over. So she said, hey, you know, Rose, what would be really helpful if somehow we could just get that message to the charge nurse or the nurse's station or something like that. So what we did here is we prototyped. We said, sure, sky's the limit. Let's give this a shot. So we, with some simple coding, we identified that the need was we needed something to hear that alarm, but then we needed it to notify somebody. So we built this little device here. This is, I think, prototype number 2 that sits next to the box and it hears the alarm and then it sends a text message to the charge nurse phone that then alerts them that the wound vac is alarming. So working with real frontline people with problems they've identified to create solutions. So that's one thing that we've done in the last 2 years. This one is Crystal, and she's another great nurse that works in our operating room. And she identified that you can see down in the bottom left picture where it's Play-Doh, and she has a vial that's a medication. So in a sterile procedure, she would hold that medication up like this. I'll take my pen. And then the doctor would come at her with the needle because he's sterile and she just has the sterile medicine, and take his needle and go into that vial, okay? Well, that's kind of scary because you're coming at me with a big needle because you have to get the solution in here to stay sterile. I can't touch it, right? So she thought there's got to be a better way. So using Instamorph was our first prototype, and that's in the upper left-hand corner, that white hard plastic thing. She wanted to create some kind of guard. And Instamorph is actually a material that's like plastic beads that when you get it hot with like coffee temperature hot water, it turns into like a pliable silly putty, and you can form that into what you want it to be. And so that's our first draft, and then it dries as a hard plastic. And then we started using computer-aided design, or CAD more commonly known, and we 3D printed a tool that works for us to be able to shield the nurses, but also allow for that sterile draw of that medication. So it's kind of a process, but we're solving problems for nurses on the front line.
That's amazing. Now this one's really cool too.
This one is a fun one too. So this one here in the bottom left-hand corner, that's Dr. Tallman, one of our neuropsychologists, and he's working on a research study to start using virtual reality as an alternative for pain medication, which is really cool in itself. But that device there he has is called an Oculus Go, and they come with a foam mask. So if you look really close up to his face, there's a little gray piece in between the hard plastic and his face, and that's made out of foam. So in the hospital, one thing you should know is we have to be able to clean everything, or how are you going to use it from patient to patient and make sure it's sanitized? So one thing that we identified was you can't clean foam masks, or how are you going to wipe that down? So he came to me and said, what can we do? So what we did is that foam piece comes out, we took that foam piece and we took a scan of it and then made a reverse mold with our 3D printer, which is what that blue 2-piece mold kit is there. And if you close that up, you can see Wincia there on the right is pouring silicone. So we actually poured our own and dyed our own silicone masks and use that as an alternative to the foam mask because they can come in and out. We can wipe them with sanitizable wipes. We can reuse them multiple times so we're not wasting. And we've solved the problem of, well, how are you going to clean it? So at first we weren't going to be able to do this in the hospital because how you couldn't clean it. So we decided to just make our own, and it actually worked out pretty great.
Now, I want to take a minute to kind of address this because with healthcare, obviously things have to be sterile. They have to be clean so that we don't have patients that are becoming infected with something else. And a lot of things are one-time use. A lot of things are made up of plastic because it's fast and easy to produce. A lot of things are wrapped in plastic. So here at EarthEcho, we're always looking at ways to kind of tease out how we can be more sustainable in our everyday lives. And I know that with healthcare, this is really a challenge just simply because of you need everything to be sterile and safe and clean. So this one struck me as really interesting because so that silicone piece that you put over the Oculus, is that a one-time use, one and done, or is that specifically made so it was easier to clean for multiple use?
Yeah, easier to clean for multiple use. Think about, I'm sure you have a smartwatch of some kind, but those rubbery bands you have, it's just like that.
Okay. So like your Fitbit or if anybody's lucky to have an Apple Watch or anything like that. Okay, great. All right, now this one's really cool as well. This one's very inspirational.
Yeah, so I do have to disclose that this is Anna, and I do have her consent signed that we can share her story. So just so you know, my HIPAA compliance is there. But Anna is a young girl who was on prom night, unfortunately, in a really bad car accident that left her paralyzed from the chest down. And one of her things that she wanted to be able to do was she loved makeup, as do I, but she loved makeup to the point of like junkie watching the YouTube videos, right? And she just wanted to be able to put on her mascara again. Well, Anna's limitations were that she could move her hands kind of up and down like this, but as far as having any fine motor movement, it didn't really exist. She's working on it and getting better every day. But so she could move things kind of up and down. And so what we found is if we could make some kind of device that we could strap to her hand, she can move her hand up and down to her face. So what we did is we 3D printed kind of a plastic clip there and put a really strong magnet in the center. Obviously, first time prototype there. And we just used a bolt because why not? It's magnetic. And we used Sugru, which is what that colorful stuff is, which is kind of like a silly putty, but when it dries, it's like a silicone ring almost. And we started making a bunch of different attachments. And then now we can put on mascara and we can do different eye mask wands. And she's able to have a little bit more independence. So it's just one way that we can, not only are we working with nurses and other staff in the hospital, but we've been able to start incorporating patients too and doing this prototyping and solving real time.
That's amazing. And again, kind of speaking to that one-time use with these devices, especially this one that you designed, she will have that for as long as it lasts, correct? And usually just use it the rest of her life.
Yep. And it's also one of those things that you can just interchange too. So change the pieces that come with it. And
that's very cool. And this is something I think is really cool. If classrooms out there or after school programs got their hands on some of these kind of silly putty type materials, they could start thinking of what is my problem and how can I form something to actually come up with a solution. So that's really, really cool. And something that your hospital is doing.
Yes, so coming soon. So like I had mentioned, over the last 2 years, we've been kind of prototyping at the bedside, basically, which means I have a cart of random things in my closet with Sugru and Instamorph and all sorts of different things, guys, I'm telling you, that I'd just go around to different places and we'd hold what we'd call a pop-up lab, or maybe I'd stop in the ICU or go down to the ED, or we just kind of have this roving pop-up lab of innovation. Well, with the help of our foundation here at the hospital, they've supported us in that we are building a physical makerspace in the hospital, which is incredible. I'm so excited. It's under construction right now. It's going to be done here in the next couple of weeks, actually. And it's actually in the Midwest. It's not super common to have innovation spaces in hospitals. They might be, you know, part of a university or something like that. But in our immediate vicinity, it's the first one that's in the hospital proper. So inside of the four walls of where we treat patients around us. So we're really excited to be able to have this physical space instead of my random cart of making changes. And you know, we've had 78 projects so far in the last 2 years, and that's just by a cart of randomness going throughout the hospital and prototyping when we can. I can't imagine what we can do with having a physical space. So really excited.
That is so awesome. Now we're running really close to time. So I do want to get to some more questions from our sites out there because I know we do have them, but it's really cool just to see a lot of people think of the medical field and they think of doctors and nurses and certain types of medical or medicine, but just marrying this with engineering, innovation, and what you have to do every single day, I think it's really cool. And for after school sites out there or classrooms or families that are tuning in, you might want to look into your community to see if there's a makerspace available. A number of them are open to the public. You can go in, you can tour. Sometimes they will have classes there, kind of do-it-yourself classes. So it's something really neat. If you dabble in any sort of, I like to make things, I like to create things, or I like to come up with solutions, that is a really great place to search for that. So let's go to our interactive sites out there. Let's go to Jefferson High School to see if they have any other questions for Rose before we start wrapping things up. Jefferson High, do we have questions?
Do you have any questions? Yes.
For students wanting to go into like the medical field, what are steps they can take now to prepare them?
Did you get that?
No, can you repeat that for us?
A little louder.
For students wanting to get involved with like this type of stuff, what are steps they can take now to like prepare them?
Great. So if students want to get involved, say in nursing or in Maker, what steps can they start taking right now to start getting involved and going on this career path? Great.
Yeah. First steps I would say would contact one of your local hospitals, see if they have any job shadow opportunities. I know that we have things on our website that you can do job shadows here in the hospital. And then also just kind of getting in tune with, see if there's any STEM leagues in your community and getting involved with that and see how they're involved in your local like healthcare arena and as far as the Maker Health space, but definitely getting involved that way and getting your foot in the door one way or another, whether that be doing volunteer work that leads to another opportunity, but just start to.
Great question. Do we have another one out there at Jefferson High before we hop on over to Green Acres?
I think that was our question.
Okay.
Wait, hold up. We have one, I guess. One
Great.
more.
Cool.
Yeah, I forgot the. Are you hearing me so far?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I forgot the name of the ice cream place.
What's wrong with you? Corner Creamery.
Say it again, Rose.
Corner Creamery. It's on.
Corner Creamery in Washington, Iowa. They're going to have an influx visit on their website, and
Perfect.
folks from Jefferson High are going to go and visit.
Do it.
That was a great question. Thank you.
Are we gonna visit?
We'll talk about that later. All right, everyone. Thank you, Jefferson High. Great questions. Now let's head over to Green Acres. And I know you did put a question in the chat, but I'll see if you want to ask that on video and if you have any others. Green Acres, do we have any questions?
Yes. Okay, that's a good question.
What's your favorite invention, thing? What I make
Say that real nice and loud.
Say a little louder.
what's your favorite invention that you made for the hospital or something?
We still didn't hear it. Can somebody repeat that for us?
She asked what it was her favorite invention.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Favorite invention. I would have to say right now, We have solved the chaos in the OR by creating interchangeable clips that fit on all of our OR beds that help hold up different types of cords, because it's dependent on the kind of surgery that you're doing, the kind of device that's in the room. So we made kind of an interchangeable clip that goes on all of our beds that helps with that problem. So it's been a quick win, an easy win, but a very well kind of held up win. So it's been kind of a fun one to have, to be able to share that even across different hospitals in our health system.
Great. All right, Green Acres, do you have one more question? We have time for just one more.
Yes.
If you left your breathing machine, can you die?
Oh.
Do what to the beeping machine?
If you left your breathing machine, was that what you asked?
Yeah.
If I left the breathing machine, could I die? Well, the breathing machine is breathing for you. So I guess if you...
I think it depends, right? Like some
Yeah.
people need oxygen, so they
Mhm.
kind of cart around oxygen tanks, and that helps them in different ways. And then other people, other patients who maybe are depending on something like a ventilator, then that could definitely not be a good thing if that breathing machine malfunctioned. And that goes back to that equipment that you all made to hear that alarm go off for the wound vac, which was a little bit different. But if somebody can't hear that with their ears, if that can send you a text message and you can run over to that room and help that patient, that's amazing. Well, you all had fantastic questions. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Rose. You were a fabulous start to our STEMExplore season this year. So this was absolutely wonderful. Thank you, everyone. So you can stay in touch with Rose and kind of follow along her journey. Here are her social media handles. You can follow her on Twitter and on Instagram. She even was nice enough to put her email on there for you guys. So stay tuned to STEMExplore, but stay tuned to what Rose is doing as well, and follow along on her journeys. Of course, I want to thank all of our STEMExplore after school partners for tuning in today, especially Jefferson High and Green Acres. You guys had awesome questions, and all of our other sites that joined our live stream today. Thank you so much. And EarthEcho has some exciting opportunities coming up this fall. We will continue to feature women in STEM careers with our virtual career connections, STEMExplore. We have several live events slated for this month and on into November and even December. Again, you can visit www.earthecho.org to see our entire lineup, because we have far too many amazing women in STEM careers to show here. But visit our website to see our entire lineup and to register. You can also stay connected with EarthEcho International on our social media channels, as well as on our website, again, earthecho.org. Visit us, stay connected. We hope to see you soon. And we, of course, want to give one last thank you to our wonderful STEMExplore mentor, Rose Hedges, and to our sponsor, United Technologies. Thank you for the support of our program. And thank you to everyone out there. On behalf of EarthEcho International, keep exploring. Bye-bye, everyone.